So what I'm going to start out doing is first I want to go over the different dimension styles, the different dimension techniques that are available for you to use that you may have used in drafting or AutoCAD. I think even in the 1010 class there's some drafting that you guys do as well. So let me start with that, and I think this first part I am just going to talk about interior dimensioning. And what I'll do is I'm just going to go from, let me find the least, I'll probably just do this wall string right here because there's just a few walls. There's less here. And again, one thing that always helps me is I have a hard time when I'm dimensioning trying to catch this inner line or this outer line. So to make things easier for my eyes, I go to coarse, so it gets rid of that detailing. So I just know that I'm going on the outside of the wall. It helps me move a little bit faster. So to begin, we all already know how to dimension. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go through and put down some dimensions. Now, you guys can see that I'm in the dimension command and I'm trying to dimension, but what's happening here? Why can't I see it? Yeah, so remind me what menu I go in to turn on my dimensions again. VV, good. I heard lots of whispers of VV. Yes. Have you guys been using VV and Element Hide quite a bit since you've learned it? Good. I use them all the time, like just as much as drafting. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to grab everything that's here. So I'm going to select all instances in entire project, and I'm just going to delete them. So that way I can start fresh. I'm going to do my DI again. And again, today I'm just focusing on the interior dimensions. Not today, but for now. And first I'm going to put down about 3 strings. That did not land where I wanted it to go. So I'm going to drag it up. Actually, I'm probably only going to do 2. So this time I'm changing it to center of core. Bless you. And then here I'm going to go back to the outside. All right. So let's start with this bottom example right here. And I'll try not to make you guys go completely dizzy by dragging this left and right. I'm going to try to leave it where it is. But this is essentially using the faces of wall right here. Now remind me again, when you guys were in CAD, did you guys do faces of wall like this? Okay, that's what I thought. And this is pretty standard. So the thing about CAD is that it's really easy to do this because you have something to snap to. There's something physical there for you to grab onto. So this is a really standard way of dimensioning the walls. But sometimes for a contractor, it gets a little bit tricky building a building. So a lot of times, even though it's not easy to do in CAD, but an industry standard is to go to the center of the wall. And I'm going to explain why. Because sometimes these dimensions help you and your clients understand the size of rooms. But when a contractor is building a building, let's imagine this whole floor right here. We start with the exterior shell, right? So these exterior walls are here, but there's nothing else here for us to measure to. So in this face of wall, am I measuring to the drywall or to the actual wall? Like the stud? The drywall. What goes first in construction? The stud or the drywall? So right now we're giving the contractor a dimension, which they would absolutely be able to figure out and do. But the thing that's most helpful is to give them the center of the stud, because in an empty space like this, what they would do is they would find this 14.7 1/4, and it's so silly, but I think it's so beautiful. Has anybody seen like a red line chalk mark before? I love them. But it looks like a big measuring tape. They pull this, it's like a string that comes out of something that looks like a tape measure. They hold it tight to the ground, and then somebody flicks it from the middle, and it just like snaps a red line on it. So whenever I dimension, I'm such a dork, I imagine that snap every single time when I put it in. So think about who you are dimensioning for. If you are just at a point where you are talking to your client about the layout of the space and it's not being built yet, then faces of wall are perfect. But if you are to the point where your client has finalized everything, they've signed off on everything, and it's time to do construction drawings, then I would switch to the center of the wall, because then you have the center of the wall, and that way if you mistakenly put, you know, 1/2 inch drywall instead of 1/4 inch drywall or 5/8 inch drywall, you know, your plans will just be that much more accurate because you're kind of taking the average of the middles. And then, you know, in rooms like the bathroom and things like that over here, there might be tile and base and all sorts of other stuff coming on that we don't necessarily account for at this point of the project. So these are the two styles, and for your midterm, I would accept either one of them. Again, the reason why we don't do this in CAD is because there's nothing to snap to. So you'd essentially have to do the M2P every single time to find that middle of the wall, which is one of my favorites, but if you're dimensioning a whole project, it would more than likely drive you insane, so don't worry about that. So either one of those works, and one thing that I would always do before you show it to me for approval, whatever it is, just make sure that every wall running vertically, right, and then every wall horizontally is being picked up, because remember, somebody's going to build this. So just go through and, you know, even highlight if you need to each one of the walls to make sure that you caught it. Dimensioning can be a little bit tricky. It gets really messy. I'll teach you guys how to clean it up in just a bit, but that's just the first thing I want you guys to remember, is that not only do your dimensions need to run vertically, but they have to run horizontally too. Let me go back to wall faces. And be consistent as well. So if I'm going to go on the bottom of wall, I just have to make sure that all the others are the bottom of wall, except for when I get to the exterior. Then I can just put it right back on the face. But bottom, bottom, and then bottom here. Okay, and here we have one other dimension way out here. I would say you're probably safe to just come through and run another dimension string to catch that. But I always like to make sure that if you run another dimension string, even if it's redundant, just go ahead and put in all the dimensions again, so there's not one random string hanging out where people don't know what it's connected to. So again, even if it's redundant, I'd rather it be redundant than A, having a contractor have to do the math to figure out where this wall is, or B, if they started here, having to go back to this string to fill in the rest of it. Okay, and then that's almost all of them. This one would be caught by the outside, so we could get that there. But I don't think I have all of these walls yet. This one this one's not in. This one's in, but this one isn't. So I'd run another string across the top too. I think with Revit it goes a lot faster, so it's easy just to throw them in, and if it doesn't work, you can add or take away as you need. Right? And now we're going to go to the outside, which I think is where most of the questions come. I think everybody knows how to do interior dimensions. It's just a matter of whether or not you're paying attention to what you're dimensioning. But for the outside, there are 3 main dimension strings. And what I'm going to do here is let me focus on, oh gosh, I'll just start on, I think they all have about, yeah, every single one of them. So I will just start up here. But with the dimensions, the first string that you put down is the overall. So you are going to go, you have to imagine that you're standing outside, so you and I are right here, and we're looking from the furthest corner of the building face to the next furthest corner of the building face. And it's okay if it steps back here, but this is still essentially part of this face or this plane over here. So that's the first one. It's the overall building plane. And again, it just goes from corner to corner, and it's okay if it doesn't if it's not in the same plane. So it's all part of the same face, whether it's north, south, east, or west, but it might not be on the same plane. So it's okay if it has a plane break. Because for the next one, again, if we're standing here, the next dimension string will be the plane breaks. So I have one here, and this is really unique because these are pop-outs. It's not like a typical building corner. So again, if I'm standing here, these are the two dimensions that I see. Now I would sneak back in here later and do this one, but again, just think of where you're standing. You couldn't see that from where I am. Does that make sense? Because we're standing here looking at this face. So overall, plane. And then the next one we have on the exterior is the opening. So for my openings, and I think this always throws people off, is we always go from center to center. And I'm going to cheat a little bit, if you guys don't mind, because I think this will help you. I'm going to take this part of the wall and pull it back a little bit, only so I can show you what happens with the plane change if you have an opening. Whoops. Ah! I wanted to right click on it to unjoin it. There we go. Those two really liked each other. Right. Again, the reason why I'm doing this is on your drafting project or another project, you could have something like this where it's an actual plane change. So here, let me do this. I'm going to add another line here. So I'm going to click on Edit Witness Lines. Essentially, whatever I click on, it's going to add that point to me for me. So I added this, and now I can continue this. So if I click on this and do Edit Witness Lines, it's going to keep going for me. So here, I'm going to go to the end of the plane, and then find the center, and then back to the end of the plane, so that you're centering it within that plane. Got it? And the reason why, when you guys were in drafting or AutoCAD, did you have to do exterior elevations at all? Okay. Did you guys have to do it to the center of the opening? Like that? Yes? Okay. I'm going to do a quick diagram on the board why. So if you're at home watching this, I'm so sorry, but you know, let me try to do it here. I bet I can do this all from my computer, but I do love drawing my little house. Okay, so this is our north elevation right here. And right now, if you guys remember, I have it measured to the center, right? I'm going to do one more that essentially just does the opening of the window. So that would kind of, but since it's an exterior dimension, let me move it to the outside. Okay, so it could be done this way. Let me just go to the next window. I'll just end it there. And then if I were to continue this one, it would be something like this. Okay? So for a long time, I was like, you know what? This makes sense. Why wouldn't we just show the opening rather than where the window is placed? And the thing is that when we look at window sizing, it's pretty intricate because sometimes if it's a 2-foot window here, when you look at the manufacturer, a 2-foot window, by the time you get the frame, the trim, and all of that, it could be 2 feet 4 or 2 feet 6 inches, or it could be smaller. It could end up just being the opening of like 1 foot 8 or something. So it might not exactly be 2 feet. So if you want a window in this exact location, let's say that this window size ended up being 2 feet 6 inches. If I measured it like this, the contractor doesn't know if they should add the 6 inches this way or if they should add the 6 inches that way. So now if you're trying to get like a symmetrical window look, something's kind of been shifted off the grid this way or this way. But if you center the window, that means that even if the window gets bigger or smaller, it's still centered on where you wanted it to be. So it ends up being kind of a wash. Then also the other thing is the window sizes should be called out on your schedule and not on your elevations. Again, with Revit, this wouldn't really happen anymore, but if you think about hand drafting in CAD, if you have called out a 2-foot window here, but in your schedule you accidentally put 3 feet, which one is right? And so that way it kind of covers you and that you're only calling it out one place. So it's less opportunity to kind of, what's that word? Contradict yourself, right? And again, in Revit, the schedule is exactly what the window is, but this was grown out of, hand drafting in AutoCAD to prevent these things from happening. So that's why we go to the center of the opening on the outside. Okay, so coming back over here, everybody in a physical space will have at least the overall dimension. Now, if you don't have any planes, if it's just this flat box with no windows or openings on it, that's the only dimension string you're going to have. Sometimes people have a flat box with some openings, so you might not have a plane dimension, right? But there could be, it's more than likely that you're going to have all 3, or like I said, 1 or 2, right? When I was looking at your drafting projects, your AutoCAD projects, not a lot of people added like pop-outs to their building. So more than likely you're going to have an overall and then an opening one if you didn't have any plane changes. Is that a question, Felicia? Okay. All right. Do those seem familiar? Yeah?
So, because ours, it is like rectangle.
Yeah.
Are we able to just do the overall dimensions, 1 on each side?
Yeah, so I would just do 1 and 1 instead of all 4 sides. If they're the same, it's okay to just call it out twice if it's symmetrical. Now, the one thing that I don't ever do in my classes because it does get so messy, I don't have you guys dimension the openings on the inside. So you don't have to dimension doors unless it's an open doorway. Does that make sense? So if it's an open archway, an open doorway, go ahead and measure the wall opening because they have to frame out for that. It's not that they wouldn't here, but here I just keep it so that you don't have to do the interior openings. Okay?
So you're saying if it's an opening with no door, then dimension it?
Yeah, so if you have like an archway or something like that, in this project, this used to, I don't know why it's not here anymore, but we had that overhead door at some point. So you could measure that because it's just like this opening that you're putting in the wall. So in that case, I would measure that, but I wouldn't put any of these in there. Okay? All right, so that's going over what I'm expecting with dimensioning. Now, the second part of this will be completely new to you all, and this will pertain to not just your dimension plan, but anytime you want to make a duplicate of a plan. As you guys can see and that you've had experience with, by the time you add dimensions and notes and all sorts of stuff, your plan gets really, really, really messy. Now, we probably haven't done this since like the first day of class, so I'd like to do this one more time. But if I come down here to my iSheets, I've got my first floor plan right here. And if I come up here and I try to put another first floor plan, it won't let me do that, right? I get one view, essentially, of the first floor. Now, tonight, let's try this part together. So everybody come to your first floor, okay? And then in your browser, do you see where you can duplicate a view? And there's a few different options. So I want you guys to become familiar with what these different views are. Can you guys read the order? So it's duplicate, duplicate with detailing, and then duplicate as dependent, right?
Yep.
Okay. I've done this a couple times. those are the three. And let's just go ahead and try one of each, and we can see how each one of them work. So let's start with the most simple one, just duplicate. So again, come to any view that you want to make a duplicate of, right-click on it, duplicate view, and here's our three options. And we're going to do all three tonight just so you can see what it does. Let's take a look at our project browser again. Do you see how now we have first floor and first floor copy 1? Now, this first floor copy 1, they are still part of the same model, but what's missing from first floor to first floor copy 1? Yeah, most of the annotation is not on here anymore. So with this one, this might be the plan where you go through and hand draft like all of the rugs and add the shading. So this could be, let me rename this. So instead of it being first floor copy 1, I could name this first floor floor finishes. Okay. And remember, because they are different views, I can come into this one, go into my VV and turn off the furniture, right? And not have it affect this one right here. Everybody with me so far? But here's the thing. They're the same model, right? I'm just controlling the views separately. If I come here and I delete the bed, what do you think is going to happen here when I turn the bed back on? Will it be there? It won't be there anymore because they're part of the same model. So controlling the visibility independently is different than actually deleting something out of the model. Do you guys see the distinction between the two? It can be really subtle. It took me it was painful because I had to learn this on my own, but I was like, I do not get the difference. What is going on here? I went through a whole plan where I duplicated the view thinking I could show my client a kitchen option, not realizing that I deleted and I had undone everything in the other because I just didn't get that they're the same model. I get it now. All right, let me come back up to first floor. So now we have first floor and floor finishes, right? On our first floor, let's right click again. And what's our second option? Yeah, duplicate with detailing. Let's try that. Tell me what it did now. What does Revit consider detailing to be? Annotation, right? It's all of the annotation. If I had drawn up detail lines or anything like that, it would have copied that over too. So it's really just giving you a full-on copy of the other plan. I don't use this one quite as often because typically when I am starting a copy of a plan, really the only thing I want are the room labels, but I typically don't want like all of the window and door tags and the dimensions, all of that stuff. So it's not common that I do this one. And now let's do the last one. Let's go to duplicate view as a dependent. And what distinction do you see with this one just in the project browser?
It's within the first floor.
Yeah, they are nested. So for example, take a look at my screen for just a minute. Because this is dependent, if I take this room 2 tag and I move it here, and let's say I delete this dimension string, because these are dependent, see how it did the exact same thing? So these truly are dependent of one another. So they are really the same plan. I just happen to have a copy of this one. But down here, remember where I had first floor copy 1? Did it do any of those things? Did it move room 2? Did it move the dimension? I didn't make them dependent on one another. So even though it copied the initial annotation and detailing, because they're not dependent, when I move one or delete the other, they're separate from one another now. So really on your project, you could use all of them or one of them, just depending on what it is you're trying to do. Now, most of the time, when I duplicate a floor plan, I am really just duplicating it. I don't need anything on there. I duplicate plans to show egress or exiting paths for the city. That's really common. I also use it for the city just to show them like an overall plan with the occupancy loads on it. So it's just like a really simple floor plan. But what we can do tonight is when we duplicate a floor plan without any of the detailing, you might maybe keep in the furniture, but you could essentially just make a dimension plan. Because remember, your contractor, whoever is building this, they don't need to know where the furniture is going. They just need to know the dimensions of the rooms. So you can duplicate your plan. I'm going to rename this. I'll call it first floor dimensions. And then that way you have a view of the dimensions that you have a view of your first floor plan to put the dimensions onto without having it affect everything else. And now, going back to where I started, if I go back to my A1 sheet, my I1, here's my first floor plan. Now I have this independent floor plan that I can throw on here. It doesn't fit anymore, but now I can have two first floor plans because they're different views of the same floor. This is the future, people. And again, it's not limited to just floor plans, but if you needed to, duplicate the elevation for some reason, like if you wanted to practice doing like some different hatch patterns or something on it, or just note it up separately, or put it on a smaller sheet, you could do that too. Most commonly in my practice, I'm duplicating the floor plans. Was that pretty straightforward for you guys, the duplicating? Okay. I'm going to show you guys one other thing, and this is skipping ahead a little bit, but it really pertains to what we're doing tonight. And in fact, on your midterm, if you want just a couple points extra credit, you can include one of these views and get some extra credit. So one of my favorite things about Revit is that if you go to View, do you see where we have something called a call out? You guys see that button right there? I love this because I always have to do in my commercial projects enlarge plans of my bathrooms. So if I make a call out right here and I just highlight around this bathroom, take a look at my browser before I click, okay? So now that I click, do you see I have first floor call out 1? Now if I go here is my bathroom exactly how I've drawn the call out. And I can even come and adjust it here however I'd like. And it adjusts it on the first floor plan. And I am not going to call this first floor call out. I'm going to rename it Enlarged Bathroom Plan. And then until it's placed on a sheet, it's just going to hang out like this. So since you guys came to class tonight, this is my part of the midterm where I will be sneaky, so you might want to write this down or watch it later. If you want extra credit, create a new sheet called the I-400s, and those are the enlarged plans, and you can put on a couple enlarged plans on there, and I'll give you some extra credit for that sheet. But try doing a call out. The thing that's nice is you can do a rectangle or a sketch. Let me do a quick sketch. I think it's straightforward, but let's say you wanted to do this whole living room right here, including the pop out. You can actually sketch exactly what your call out is going to look like. Okay, so you could either do a rectangle or you could sketch it. And then again, down here, first floor wait, is this one? First floor copy one? No. Let me find it. First floor call out one. Because I already renamed the first floor call out, it just renamed that one. And then if I delete this, if I don't want that anymore, see how the call out is gone? Or vice versa. If I delete the call out, you guys will see that this plan disappears. Okay, so it makes it so much easier to call out details on your sheets and again, not contradict yourselves. One of the biggest issues that we had on our plan sets when I was working in the field when we were in AutoCAD is that on our plans we would call out a detail that didn't exist, or in our details there would be a detail that was never called out on the plans. And so the contractor was like, this isn't called out anywhere. I know it's in the set. It's on this detail sheet, but you haven't called it out anywhere in the plan. Or even worse, we call out something that we've never detailed in the set. But the way that Revit does it, you have to have both there for it to work. It has to go somewhere. Right? Okay. Any other, I'd love to open it up to general questions before I do desk critiques, whatever questions you guys might have. And remember, we're going to do this, we're going to do another small lecture on Thursday and then do some desk critiques Thursday as well. So if you want a little bit more time to work, I'm happy to meet with you on Thursday, both nights. It's really your time, but I'd like to open it up to just general questions before I do the desk critiques. Dishina?
Really quick, because you said 400, it would be I-401, right?
Yes.
Zeros,
Mm-hmm. You got it. Yep. But I don't know what you're talking about. Just kidding. Yes. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to post both of these lectures for you guys on YouTube. So one of them will be dimensioning and enlarged plans, and then the other one will just be kind of like a midterm review. And again, I'm going to stop by and see Raquel and Jules. If anybody else wants to talk tonight before you leave, just go ahead and sign up and I'll come see ya.